Thank you for joining us here. Really appreciate Seattle Interactive Conference inviting us to talk. My name is Matthew Mulder. I'm Executive Creative Director of Digital Kitchen, and the guy with the beard is David McCullough. He's Creative Director at DK. So in the middle here is Ellie, Kemery, from co-founder of MakerHaus over in Fremont. And our companies collaborated earlier this year to put on a hackathon. This partnership gave us a chance to push ourselves and make new friends, but most importantly, all right, we good? All right. So we'll look deeper into this in a bit, but first, though, we wanted to talk a little bit about the shared spirit that brought us together. So DK, let me tell you a little bit about Digital Kitchen. We're a 15-year-old creative agency located on Capitol Hill. We have offices in Chicago, Seattle, and Los Angeles. You know, as a company and throughout our history, we've embraced the unconventional, the adventurous, the tactile, the beautiful. Authentic and human, our work is a reflection of our culture, the people you see here. This is the Seattle office. This was our class picture last year. We're a collection of contrarians, refugees, rebels, tinkerers from many different traditions. Somehow we all share a common vision to not just look at our expertises as siloed activities, but that we do our best work when we're mashing things together and working side by side. And that's been true from the very beginnings of DK. It got its name as kind of a breakaway outfit within a small advertising agency that Paul Matthias was running with his partner Halverson, and he decided to explore this idea of making as the desktop video revolution was happening in the mid-90s, and it so consumed him that you know, that kitchen activity in his agency became is what became Digital Kitchen, and you know, became the company that is here 15 years later. So, like I said, what brings us together is our passion for making things and telling the stories that connect with others. So, why are we here today? What makes this unique? I'm sure a lot of you who might work in other creative agencies do similar things. Why is having a creative culture important to our success, or finding new ways to bring expressions to users and audiences and customers alike? I Googled creative process. Well, we're in Seattle. I binged creative process, and these are just some of the things that popped up, and I think that they probably you know, are in service of a lot of good efforts. I think what we like to challenge, though, is that a lot of times the conversation about what we do or how we do it or why we do it gets tangled up in procedure and process. And we think process is important. Certainly, you're not going to make anything of any complexity or scale without some sort of discipline to the practice. But we don't define ourselves by that sort of empirical organization. It's not where our efforts begin and end. Our focus is on nurturing passion and curiosity every day within the office. Kitschlandia, for example, is our annual summer vacation. It's 2 or 3 days in the middle of the week that we recharge and try to re-inspire one another. We don't make it into sort of breakout sessions to talk about work or look at it from an academic pursuit. We really just try to hang out together and see each other outside of professional practice. And we like to push the boundaries of what's possible. A lot of times the client work, while awesome and challenging and enjoyable, that sort of practice doesn't allow you to color outside the lines a lot of times. So 3 years ago, we started to put on our own version of hackathons to challenge ourselves to try new things. Just like a traditional hackathon within a developer community, failure or success wasn't the focus. What could we make in a night or compressed time with little restrictions on what the end result would be? That was what we were after. So how do we accomplish this? Like I was saying earlier, over the years we've evolved into and out of various methodologies and mediums. We've been a production company. We've concentrated within agency worlds and television and all sorts of things. We've added interactivity and bringing in our own developers and looking at film and even social work or sort of social campaigns or digital, all as common activity to find new expressions and inventive ways to creatively communicate amongst audiences. And so that remains consistent throughout, and there's just some core beliefs that I think are consistent within our organization over that span, and is not just an attempt to sort of capitalize on new trends or even emerging technologies. One thing is to be a collective. Our work will always be better because we collectively pitch into making our ideas better. To us, the ideas are absolutely precious. You need to do everything that you can to protect those ideas. And ownership is not only not critical, it's not welcome in the sense that we don't try to funnel work through a certain hierarchy. Most of the best ideas don't come from me or even from Makula, who tend to lead teams. Oftentimes they are invented from the interns or anybody else but the sort of quote-unquote leaders of the organization. And we don't separate our disciplines into specialties, and I'll touch on that in a second. But from the get-go, everybody's that is assigned to a job is put into a room together, and you're pushing ideas around, through a lens of digital, through a developer's lens, through a filmmaker's lens, or writer, or what have you. An example would be, this was a Christmas party that we were having. We decided to mash up a classic photo booth experience with animated GIFs and create something memorable. And it was the result of bringing together expertise in a number of areas: photography, coding, art direction, experiential ideas. It was organic. It was completely unmanaged. It happened because everyone collectively combined to the effort. In fact, I think I was the last to know, but the first to get in front of it. Oh, yeah. So another thought is be a problem maker. Obviously, at the end of the day, we're here to solve problems, but we also believe it's our job to find problems where none seemingly exist. We want to use empathy as a trigger to discover needs that are yet to be identified. We can't wait for them to present themselves. For example, we did a Whole Foods Earth Month campaign back in April. Whole Foods didn't come to us and say, we want an influencer kit. They wanted to activate their customers and reestablish themselves as an authority within Earth Month. But in order to do that, to us it was important to inspire influencers within the Whole Foods community to spread the word. And David and a team came up with this idea to 3D print some ceramic animals that were activated when you combined them with a fruit or a vegetable, and they would deliver a message. Now that is not going to come out of a client's creative brief. And when they sort of got a hold of or when we presented it to Whole Foods, they loved it, and you know, we diverted resources to get it done. And I think that that's representative of finding a problem for ourselves to solve that's in service of the larger needs. Another thing that we all often talk about at DK is that stories are meant to be shared. It's easy to get caught up into the making of the thing and forget that an idea's power might lie in its experience rather than its form or function alone. So ask yourself, what is the story that you're telling? And it doesn't matter if you're making an object, or you're developing a campaign, or you're working already in some sort of narrative form. There's a beginning and a middle and an end of that experience to the end user or audience, and how do you tap into what their experience is going to be almost matters more than the message or the object that you're making. And then, oh, I got that backwards. Here, let me go there. Never stop learning. Did I do that right?
Where's Stanley at?
Yeah, Stanley.
Yeah.
Yep.
So stories may be shareable. So Stanley was the example for this. This was just came out of the notion of us wanting to participate in the Capitol Hill Block Party. Nobody asked us to. We presented an idea to them that, hey, what if we made a piano tweetable? Could you tweet a song to a player piano and have it play back to you? So just based on that simple notion, we made this talking piano, and it had a sense of humor, and it takes requests via Twitter. Stanley was as much about inventing a voice as it was about making the piano work. The entire office believed in Stanley, and everyone helped. So back to that notion of ideas being precious and not owning them. Everybody in our 30-plus person office, even our lawyer, touched this project because he had to clear the songs to get them to play. And sort of the last thought to leave you with in terms of DK's approach is never stop learning. It's an obvious one, but I think it gets overlooked maybe the quickest. We believe we must reinvent and refresh our knowledge constantly. That means digging, finding a deeper understanding of our core skills while simultaneously finding a broader ways to apply them. We are most valuable when we're continually bringing new experiences into our practice. So that sort of that visual there is, anybody who's played in human resources areas probably has seen this before, but it's the classic T that employees, the people that you are working with, have a deep well of knowledge, usually an expert in a certain practice. But then their value is also how broadly that expertise can be applied. So we always try to look at each other and how we form teams and how we grow as a company, in that what expertise can we bring in, and then how is that expertise going to be collaborated throughout the organization. And all of this impacts how we think, how we love, how we make, or why we make. This is DK, and now I'm going to hand the mic over to David, who's going to talk from the lens of being an individual, and how do you deal with some of these same aspects, not from an organizational level like I was telling you, but just the notion of what you bring as an individual to drive yourself and energize yourself and those around you.
Sweet. Is this thing working? Okay, good.
So yeah, I mean, within an organization like Digital Kitchen, which we definitely see as like a school for adults, we are constantly learning, constantly working on new ideas. You are always being pushed to kind of create original work, inspiring original work, and I think I think there's a lot of people that learn from emulation, like just copying and remixing and putting out projects that have already been in existence, and even doing a lot of research in relation to that. So when you're learning to think for yourself and going to school and whatever that might be, like this is a fantastic way to learn. You learn by copying others. And so when you're being a professional and you're being a creative, it's completely the opposite. And if you constantly put all of your energy into finding successful examples of work that has been created in the past so that you can present your idea of what you want to make for the future, you're going to stop making things that are original or that are inspiring. And so as you start curating this beautiful work, you end up spending a lot of time, a lot of energy, and you start thinking that making anything original is kind of impossible, or that clients would even want you to. And so there are clients out there that'll constantly ask for, a certain idea, like make the new chalkbot or make the new subservient chicken, which was like around for 10 years plus. But as a leader inside of an organization, like empowering your creatives and your teams to kind of think a bit broader and a bit more out of the box is a little bit hard. And so, so you start collecting all this successful work, and that's because that's what's being asked of you. And so you start living vicariously through all these people that are making these beautiful things. And so when you start watching people make these beautiful things, that is the worst feeling in the entire world, when you start like just wanting what other people have. And so it becomes overwhelming every day because you constantly have this stuff at your fingertips. You're seeing what everybody is doing and has done constantly. And so you can only watch and dream and admire and see the jealousy for so long until this painting that Matt did last night consumes you and you can't escape. And you become complacent and you take pride in your hurt. And so you stop looking to kind of challenge the norms, and you become pretty complacent and you start doing your job and you escape into other people's creativity. And so it's comfortable being a fan, and that's why making something without a blueprint is super scary. But when you start exploring into places that you've never been before and working with people you've never worked with before, you have to you start realizing that you're making yourself uncomfortable. You're doing things you've never done before. And at first, your brain's like, you are a fucking idiot. What are you doing? Why are you doing these things? But you start learning so much about yourself and so much about how you will respond in situations you've never been in, that it becomes this empowering thing and this constant urge. And so it's a little bit scary, but it pays off. And being comfortable is stale anyways. So yeah, making anything is a risk. And there's, always this notion of wanting to find a formula to make consistently amazing work. And in what we do, we don't really ever do the same thing twice. So that there's a process in place for us to create things. But you can't create another Stanley the way that it was. You can't switch the instrument. You can't do this. There has to be another level applied to it. And so if you're going to make anything, which is scary enough as it is, why follow in the footsteps of anybody else? And why not, why work from example when you can make something new, the first example of something? And so kind of leaning more into kind of how to do that, it's you get to a point where you start committing to the impossible. You start putting yourself in positions where you can't say no. You can't give up. Maybe you don't even have enough time to work on the project, but no matter what, everything gets done. And so you have to make sure that your team feels empowered. You have to be comfortable fucking up. You have to make sure that they see a light at the end of the tunnel, because they're gonna constantly fuck up. I fuck up all the time, and I'm going to keep doing it. And you just gotta get through it quick, soak it up, move on, because there's always stronger work ahead. And as you work through these ideas and you start figuring things out, you wanna get to a place where you can feel rather than think, because that's the best feeling in the entire world, where everything just seems so sharp and so fresh, like nothing else is being made. And that your team's ideas feel so natural and obvious, and then it all kind of comes from intuition. And so, when you can start making things and realize that it didn't come from the latest article within Creativity or Wired or TechCrunch or whatever, that's the golden spot. And so this is all great in theory, it's all great in emotion, and I'm an emotional dude. But how would you even start doing this? How do you start coming up with original ideas? No matter what environment you're in, whether it's a creative organization like this or something else. And this is a notion of magic circles. And so a Danish cultural historian coined this term, and basically it's a playground to act a fool. And so you kind of create this temporary world inside of our ordinary world where everybody knows the same rules. Everybody follows the same thing. There's no ego, and everybody feels comfortable to just be dumb and ask questions and do things they've never done before. And so basically titles don't matter in a magic circle. Your clients can be a part of the magic circle. Your interns have as much authority as a creative director. There's no time to like critique and create at the same time. Everybody's working towards the same goal, and clients feel invested in these ideas because they are one in the team. And it's an amazing thing once they actually feel empowered and they feel like they need to go sell the idea internally the way that you're going to sell it to them anyways. And so within a magic circle, you don't critique and create at the same time. You suspend judgment completely. There's no right or wrong answer. You guys just spitball and figure it out. You're not self-conscious. You can just ask and experiment, and it's okay to be dumb. And so, all in all, when you leave that magic circle with this idea in your hand, like become that problem maker, like Matt was saying, have a personal stake in the outcome of whatever you do. You have no idea where ideas will come from. Like it could be an experience that you had as a child watching Karate Kid, or even at the time our coworker went to Magic Castle in LA and saw a piano play on its own. And so feel comfortable to ask questions, don't be embarrassed or apologetic, and then find a space to actually try something new. And that's kind of why we found MakerHaus.
So we created MakerHaus because we all have ideas. This is my partner, Mike Kemery, and he would have loved to have been here today to talk about it. But we have mounds of ideas. You know, every time we're traveling, any place we go, we're coming up with these things, and we just, didn't really have a resource like many of you. I mean, how many of you have ideas? Yeah, so a ton of you have ideas, right? And I mean, with things like Kickstarter, it's never been easier to get your idea out there, but you really need a place to go where you can prototype it and get it to a level where it's viable. And so we created a place to make your ideas possible, make our ideas possible. And so we do that in a variety of ways, which I'll get to, but some of the things that we see all the time, like this is an example of a project that started out of a startup weekend we had a few months back. This guy, he had this idea, and this is just one of many that we see. I mean, it's kind of amazing, and he wanted to create this way for motorcyclists and bike riders to dim the bright lights when they encounter them and have a more comfortable ride and safer ride. And so using LED panels and sensors, he created a way for them to do that. So pretty exciting. This is MakerHaus. It's 10,000 square feet of innovation space, work studio space. We have shop space in there. It's in Fremont, which is center of the universe. And we are all about empowering creative minds. And we do that by providing people with resources. So things like access to a laser cutter and access to a variety of 3D printers, or access to a wood and metal shop. We have an electronics lab, we have sewing, all these different things that people could never really assemble themselves. I mean, I certainly couldn't as an individual, let alone have the space to do it. And then, providing people with a space that's inspiring and lends itself to creating community. So what we see all the time at MakerHaus is like people of all variety of backgrounds coming together, engineers, working with industrial designers, working with graphic designers, working with artists, performance artists. I mean, you name it, like people coming together and tinkering on their ideas, helping each other on ideas, which is also very exciting. We also try and provide a means for people to grow beyond what they know. So access to education, we have a lot of classes that we offer. We believe in learning through doing, so many of our classes you actually do use some of these things like a laser cutter, even if you're taking an Adobe class, or we teach people entrepreneurial skills, so like how to start up a business, all these different things are just a means to help you guys get your ideas out there. And we just want you to create and be able to create more innovation. I mean, the world needs more innovation, not same old, but more disruptive, less incremental, and that's why we thought this was a natural partnership.
Totally.
So, shall we?
So yeah, this was our third year having a hackathon, and usually, I mean, hackathon is where Stanley was kind of born out of as well. We ripped apart a piano overnight, kind of broke it, put it back together before morning. But this year, we kind of gave it a theme of games, and because games can be mental or analog or digital, we thought it was a good space to kind of think on that. And kind of everybody paired off. We thought about 12 ideas, and we went and spent 2 days at MakerHaus using their tools and their staff, who was amazing. And yeah, and this is kind of the outcome of it.
Yeah, go ahead, just take it apart, just see what happens. Oh God. Ready to freak out a little bit?
What? So, thanks. So that was sort of, you saw at the end of it, there was a dozen little invented games. They're all still in the development phase. But it was a very informative experience on many levels because we start to get into questions of, did you guys leave the, there's still a little bit left, but whatever. But you start to get into notions of product development, and this is, you know, we're a company that has told stories for a living, and we're you know, getting into digital and physical, but product development isn't a long tradition in our house. So you know, just going through this experience and seeing how to make a prototype function, what's needed for a prototype. I mean, how rough can it be? How simple can it be? And then to work with notions of game mechanics and trying to think of what's the conceptual purpose of this. Why would anybody play? Why would anybody care? Those aren't necessarily things that we're going to see in our day-to-day, and it was great to have an event like this to not only sort of play, but to give it enough intention that we push ourselves to develop, and they're looking forward to seeing some of these come to fruition. One of the things that you saw in the video was a little box with flipper switches, and it was meant to be sort of this multi-purpose game board where you could play a number of different types of games with it, and then the lights would behave in different ways depending on if it was a minesweep type of game or more like a classic checkers game or so forth. But one of the guys who did that, he's from our 3D team in Chicago, Todd, and so he's used to pushing pixels around all day. Didn't have a lot of experience in making like physical objects, but obviously had a sort of a dimensional mindset since he was in 3D. And he went back and created, I don't even know how to explain it, but it was kind of this music sharing device based on a lot of sort of classic analog stereo components. And now it's sort of in the middle of the office there. And he's sort of made something that affects those people around him, but it also becomes a calling card to clients and friends of our organization that we're not just going to sort of come up with the expected, and that there's always the chance that we could surprise you with something special. And that's certainly important for us moving forward. So I guess that's what we got. Did you want to add anything?
I think with things like a hackathon, it's easy to look at it as just a pure investment in creative culture, but the outcome of it all, it adds so much more value to the people's lives internally that gets just feeded back into your company. And so whether or not you feel that it can be applied to future projects, it totally can. Anything you learn during one of these sessions goes right back into the work you're making, and you might actually have the opportunity to make some of those projects become client projects or paid projects. So the investment is worth it, and the more you do it, the more possible that becomes.
Yeah, for example, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
For example, the Stanley project that we did just on a lark, more or less over summer, this year we were contacted by Chobani, the yogurt company, and they are the major sponsor for an event in New York City called Sing for Hope, where they place 88 pianos throughout the 5 boroughs in New York City. And having seen Stanley online, they contacted us, and Stanley became the MC, basically, of the event at their flagship store in Manhattan. And they paid us to do that, and we made a profit, and all the good things that you need to have as a business. And even that proto booth that was made for a Christmas party became something that Adidas Originals picked up and made their centerpiece for their Lollapalooza installation in Chicago. And so, both of those were started without permission. And proceeded without permission, and not that anybody in the organization would squash it, but you're in the middle of pitching, you're in the middle of trying to finish quote unquote real work, and then you've got some pirates over there trying to work on some damn player piano, and it's hard to sort of get all of that stuff aligned. In terms of how you schedule it and allow for it. So you kind of need to have this spirit of, holding your breath. You need to have this kind of parental DNA that says that kid might burn his finger on the stove over there, but he'll never do it again if he does it once. So, how do you do it? I think you just need to allow a certain amount of organic behavior within your company, within your culture, that some of this magic will naturally spill out if people are energized to do so.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've actually been seeing a lot of firms and a lot of industry people come to MakerHaus for this very reason. It's kind of like a big hackathon there, really, like all the time, like I mentioned. So, it's fun. It may not seem relevant at the time, but you just never know. Like people people get so motivated when they overcome boundaries that they thought they had, and they start to be able to draw from that experience later. So it's really powerful.
And you guys come from a background of agency experience, but also like client side as well.
Yeah. I mean, I worked at Hornell. My husband and I were both at Nike before. I was at Wexley for a while. I mean, he was at Teague, which is a local industrial design firm. And so we come from working in mostly innovation groups, to be honest. And a lot of, what we've experienced is this mesh of like a lot of disciplines coming together and not being afraid to fail and just going through a process and learning and iterating and just, huge leaps in innovation take place when that happens.
Yeah. So I think we got about 15 or so minutes for questions. We'd love to have you guys shoot us some questions. I'm sure we can dive deeper into some of these things.
Totally.
And a free T-shirt for whoever asks a question.
And 3D printed bracelet and our official cord organizer.
Oh, they want you to stand up at the mic too, so quid pro quo.
Get it.
So do you offer like a hackathon service at MakerHaus for companies to come and bring
Not
their...
officially, but not officially. But I mean, we do team offsites. So we do things like people come to us often to do design charrettes and stuff like that. So certainly open to it.
One of my curiosity is what is the sell or like the pitch to an executive or the local leadership? Hey guys, I would like to take my department for 3 days to become a more creative team. Like, has that been a hard sell, or I don't know if there's tips that we can use?
Here. Yeah. I think that it, well, like I said, I guess there's executive in my title, but I don't know. We kind of came up with the idea. Luckily, we have leadership, and the spirit of the company was started on this idea of experimentation being important. And I think that what led to Stanley, for example, was putting together a deck of a couple of ideas, and Stanley, the piano, was clearly the best one of the bunch. And once we presented to them just a deck that took us a couple of days to put together, they were all in and gave us a small budget to help us buy the piano, and there was some more hard costs involved with some of the programming and technology. And then we just took it from there. If you add up the soft costs on an effort like that, it's not anything that can make any financial sense other than to have the long view that having the team go through that is an investment in their future and the future of the company, and by that means it's priceless. Stanley has given us a tremendous amount of press as a company. So I think that when you're talking to an executive level, if they're just going to apply it to sort of a profit-driven formula, it's hard to make sense, and they need to see the larger picture of what it can do for their organization in terms of it's not only enrichment. These activities aren't sort of just feel-good pieces. They're meant to drive innovation throughout all levels of our company, and not hold it in reserve for any special people or class within the organization.
A lot of conventional stories of how creative companies innovate are kind of like there's a template for it almost in stretching oneself. So I'm curious, how would you, what would be the ideal way to destroy your creative enterprise to evolve it to the next thing?
3D printed bracelet.
Well, there
for
you
you. Sure.
Burn it to the ground. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. We talk about burning the walls down all the time. How do you continue to reinvent yourself? It probably is very contextual to the individuals within it, but how would we approach it is that I don't think we associate ourselves with a particular way to practice, and that's an important distinction. We're not about what we make. We are aligned around wanting to make a difference, however that might get defined, because I've been with DK for 10 years myself. The company is 15 years old, and if you track that timeline about what we did, when I first got there, if you didn't know After Effects, you had no business being in the building. Now we have 3 folks who use After Effects regularly, and by regularly I don't mean often. That's because we are looking for new modes of expression constantly, and it's not about getting on top of the latest trend, other than the fact that having the realization that communication and creativity are in constant flux, and what works now is not going to work in the future. What makes us individuals, what makes us special, what makes us human are our expertise and the sort of fine mixture of different expertise. And that is something that's always going to be valuable. The tools, the methods, the mediums are all destined to be commoditized because everybody works to wring out the absolute most efficient way of delivering something as technologies age, as delivery mechanisms age. So if you don't always, if you're not always willing to say that, hey, maybe videotape isn't going to be around in 20 years, or maybe broadcast TV isn't going to be, what it is. If you're not willing to do that, then you're probably destined to sort of stay in a specialty and ride that wave till it crashes on shore, and you don't have any place to go after that.
Yeah, and I actually think that hackathons and this weird empowerment of individuals that aren't in the executive level can actually have a big impact on your creative culture and do that massive change. So it's like Stanley Piano, Proto Booth, as those kind of came to be, and they came to be in a very pirate way, like Matt was saying. There just happened to be a piano show up at our doorstep randomly, and I might have bought it.
Hey Matt, I bought a piano.
Yeah, I bought a piano.
Okay.
And so, after that happened, it did change a lot of mindset. It got a lot of attention from the executive staff. And so the more you do that, and the more you kind of turn away from people doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing, as long as it's always in the effort of improving the company or moving it forward, there shouldn't be any red tape or things that hold it back.
Hello.
Okay.
I had a question for a lot of novice filmmakers who are learning to just get started with video, and they're kind of in that area where they want to do spec work, they want to work for large companies, they want to get some real stuff going on, but they're also kind of faced with that I'm a one-man band kind of thing where, hey, I'm doing this all on my own, and I'm also have to pay the bills as well. What would you just kind of recommend to those guys who they want to do something to get noticed by the larger companies, the bigger ad agencies, while still kind of in that still kind of solo attitude, I guess, would you say?
Yeah, it's that's sort of a age-old question is how do you get recognized? I think that there's a tremendous amount of advantage for storytellers because the tools required, the economy of it is exponentially smaller than what it used to be. I mean, we get priced out of a lot of work because we simply can't afford to compete against 1, 2, 3-person teams that, quite frankly, do a very good job because the tools are so available. How you get yourself noticed is just a lot of hard work. and probably courage to stand out. You got to find what your unique point of view is and then completely commit to that. And people will recognize when somebody is doing something new and unique, and to sort of ladder that into what we're doing or what we're talking about here, it's the same thing. It's easier and easier to make stuff. We all used to be, at least when I started, industrial design, graphic design, so on and so forth. Design always had a qualifier. The lines between those practices are completely blurred, blown up. They kind of almost don't make a difference in a certain sense. Yes, there's knowledge bases that you learn over the years, but access to that expertise is even easier. So it's more important to be a good collaborator. So at the end of the day, you need to decide what you want to say with your films, and your audience will find you, more or less. And distribution, attention, access to tools to make it happen, that's completely available to almost everybody.
Yeah, I mean, somebody that used to work at DK named Chris Abbas always had this one awesome saying, which is one for the meal, one for the real. And so if you can kind of spread that between the two, I think you're good.
I like that. It's a t-shirt.
It is a t-shirt.
Thank you for everything you've shared today. I'm really inspired by the MakerHaus, and actually in the process of launching Makerspace Hacker Lab to tap the genius of young people in Central and South Seattle. And so I had two questions. One was, what is your balance around the social engineering side versus what culture developed organically in your space? And the second was just, what would be some good insights that maybe you wish you had or you've learned along the way in developing the makerspace?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of creating a culture at MakerHaus, really, creative minds is kind of, that is our audience. I mean, they're people that we initially coming into this thought we knew, these would be professional creatives is what we were thinking. People that, like the kind of people we used to work with at companies, but as it turns out, it's just across the board, young people, old people. We've got older people, like 70-year-old
Canadians.
Canadians coming in, and these are people that they're creative, they have ideas that they've been wanting to explore for maybe a really long time. And so there's sort of a natural curiosity about them, an openness, definitely collaborative, kind of a presence about them. So those people created the culture. I mean, we set up a shop that was, inspiring in that it's open. There's a lot of opportunities for people to have ideation sessions like brainstorm. It's open, it's light, it's a place where you feel a little bit free, and naturally that's happened. So in terms of what we've learned, I mean, really, I guess we've learned that there's, the audience isn't so narrowly focused, and that was kind of our big thing. Was we knew that people needed this place, and we knew that it was important to make all of this stuff accessible, but we didn't realize how broad, like software developers, like all these people that architects. I mean, just like the range is so vast. So.
Do you have any feedback or any ideas on how to encourage collaboration, especially in the context of like an agency where your billable hours, you're watching it like a hawk every minute of the day, and I feel like the best collaboration happens, like on the fly. And so in that context, and also the different disciplines tend to kind of huddle together and kind of go off and do their own thing. Do you have any sort of ideas on how to encourage that?
Yeah, two things. We do have timesheets, and we do have billable hours. I don't think that we police it. I think that there's even the board of directors, down to the CEO and the founders, allowed for a bit of chaos. It's maddening to them in terms of how to measure profitability, and frankly, we probably would be more financially profitable if we were, efficient. But at the same time, I think everybody, like we were sort of looking at before, they're refugees from other well-run organizations, and I think that we allow for a little bit of chaos in the system to let people slip, because you're exactly right. Most progress on work, client or otherwise, happens with the informal discussions. The sort of midpoints are stages to sort of check progress, make sure things aren't going off the rails, but by and large, you don't see the big aha moments happen in those places. So we want to encourage all of that informality, and if that comes at the cost of tracking billable hours accurately, then so be it. And then the other thing about people clustering, it's incredibly true. The best thing that we've done is just shove everybody together in one space and allow for any sort of rooms that might exist in our space to be multi-purpose, that sometimes they're used as midpoint places, sometimes they're used as semi-permanent project brainstorming walls. Let those things be the mutable parts. What's standard is that the designer is sitting next to the writer, who's sitting next to the developer. Because of the way our space is mapped out, we have 2 floors, and most of the administration is on the lower floor. But there has always been some extra room, and as we've grown and shrunk over the years, sometimes creative staff have gone down to that second floor, and it's created its entire own microculture, just having the separation of one flight of stairs. And it absolutely destroys the ability for that team and the rest of the creative team to effectively collaborate. It's incredible, even just what 10 feet mean in terms of people getting together. So, half walls, cubicles, separate offices, all of that, not everybody has access to a warehouse space, but whatever is possible in terms of people sitting on top of each other, right next to each other, that hopefully are vastly different from each other, that's how we've gotten around people sort of clustering in specialties.
Yeah. Just one more thing on that as well. I think to make that collaboration happen, to make that little fire kind of burn inside of everybody to go work on something special that's not their billable stuff, you kind of have to be the catalyst for that stuff. And if you don't actually say, like, that's a great idea, let's go make that, it'll never ever happen. And then on the other side of it too is like, I highly recommend reading the book Game Storming. It's a way to kind of break up brainstorming and give everybody the same voice. So if you have developers and writers that are very quiet and reserved, and you can't get them to collaborate with the designers because the designers are always louder than everybody else, then there's ways around that. There's ways to break down ideas. There's ways to include clients. It's phenomenal.
This isn't a question. It's a kind of a shout out for MakerHaus. I've been there as a student of classes, like even last night, the Inventor's Journey, and also as a host of events. Space.City usually hosts architectural lectures at the library, but we had one last Friday at MakerHaus, and because of the wonderful atmosphere and the wonderful people there, it was one of the best events we have ever had. So if you're of any curiosity at all about the overlap between making stuff and designing things, there are always people working there. They're always doing really interesting things. There's always something interesting on the walls, in the lab, going on. So you should go. It's really a really great resource for inventive and creative people in the city.
Did you pay her?
Awesome.
Yeah, the check is in the mail.
Well, we're right up on 50 after, so I guess we'll wrap it up if that's it.